The housing market is, well, a little bit confusing and maybe even a little bit misleading right now. And what I mean by that is I'm hearing and reading a lot about what people are calling the golden handcuffs. And so I'm going to explain what that means and whether or not that's something that even is relevant here in the Southern Oregon real estate market. So first off, welcome to another episode of Southern Oregon Real Estate Market Information. Thanks for checking it out. We're going to dive into the real estate market information for Southern Oregon, Jackson, and Josephine counties here in just a second. So thank you for checking it out. If you haven't been here before to watch, I'm Brian Simmons. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in Southern Oregon with eXp Realty. So thanks for tuning in, and let's go ahead and cut right to the chase and dive into the data. So the data that we're looking at is through the 4th of July, and on the morning of the 5th, I looked and we had 1,101 homes on the market between Jackson and Josephine counties of Southern Oregon, only looking at single-family residential homes. And the rest of the data for the week prior was so surprising. I had to go back and check it multiple times to make sure that I didn't type something in incorrectly or misread it or something. But for new listings over the week prior to that, we only had 87. To give you some context, the week before that, we had 138. And 123 before that, 127. So we were like in that 120s, 130 range for quite some time. And then for it to jump down to 87 new listings was pretty crazy to see. And I'm guessing that was likely just because of the 4th of July. And generally when we see, a holiday weekend, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, those types of weekends, we don't see a lot of new listings hit the market because people kind of tend to wait. So next week will probably be a lot of new listings hitting the market. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. Price changes, we saw 82, again, way less than normal, and that's also likely due to the same reason. 16 homes came back on the market. 102 went pending, so that was nice to see that, we had less things come on the market, but we had more, or right about the same as normal for pending still happening. So there's still buying activity going on, despite the fact that it was, a holiday week and there wasn't many homes hitting the market. So 81 did close and 34 came off the market through either being expired, withdrawn, or canceled. So what's interesting here is that we had seen inventory kind of tick up. And, the week prior, when we did our market report, we were at 1,128 listings on the market, and then we came down to 1,101. So it's not very common to see, a dip like that in inventory this time of year, but we definitely did see that, obviously, because the level of new listings was just much lower than normal. So that's, I think a good sign. I don't know if it's really a good sign or not. It's kind of just, it is what it is. It's a holiday week and all bets are off in those times. So anyways, a little bit interesting there, but I think, like I said, this next report that we do next week will probably show a little bit higher inventory number and a lot more new listings hitting the market would be my guess. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you are alerted when that new report comes out and you can stay up to speed on what's happening in the Southern Oregon real estate market. So I did mention the golden handcuff scenario, and I want to explain that because that's something that I just read an article about this morning, and I've heard a lot of other people asking me about it. And what they're talking about is essentially they're saying that on the national level, people don't think that many homeowners are selling because most of them are locked into mortgage rates in the 3s or 4s, and they refinance their home or whatever the case is. They have these great mortgage rates, and they don't want to sell now because they would have to get a mortgage rate in like the 7s, and that's where things are at now. And we'll get into mortgage rates here in a second. But that's kind of the general concept, is that they think sellers aren't going to sell because they have great rates. Why would they sell their home? Because they have a great interest rate. And that makes some sense, but it's kind of short-sighted because you're not really considering the fact that, a lot of people sell because there's some sort of life event that's kind of causing them to sell. Whether that's, taking a new job elsewhere, or their family's growing, or there's a divorce or whatever. There's something that is causing people to sell. And if you look at what our market is doing here locally in Southern Oregon, we're having, if you take, last week out of it because it was such an outlier with only 87 new listings, we look at, let's look at the 6 weeks prior to that, we averaged 128 new listings hitting the market every single week. And if we go back to, July and June of last year, we would average about 150. 153. So not a substantial difference. And so I don't, to me, that doesn't say that anybody's really holding off on doing anything. That just means that, Plenty of people are putting homes on the market. It's a little bit less than last year, but it's not a big deal. It's not something that I would be writing articles about, saying that there's some big issue going on where people are not selling because their rates are so good. Clearly here, there's plenty of people listing their homes, and there's plenty of people buying their homes. There's our inventory levels are basically the same as where they were this time last year, actually lower, slightly by like not, let me see, not maybe 100 units less. Okay, so we were at 1,200 last year. We're at 1,100 this year. Not significant at all. Certainly not significant enough to say that, there's this issue with people not selling. So that's the Golden Handcuff situation. I don't think it's relevant here currently in the Southern Oregon housing market. I think that it's something that, you're maybe seeing in bigger markets where they are used to having much more inventory, and their inventory is kind of shrinking. So here's what is happening with mortgage rates, because I mentioned that real quick. Mortgage rates have been, if you've been following, these market reports, I've mentioned it multiple times, they've just kind of been like tracking along in the sixes, and they finally kind of bump back over 7, and they're back to like the highest point that they've been since November. And so, that makes affordability an issue, right? Like when mortgage rates go up, your mortgage is more expensive. It costs you more money to pay your mortgage and all that. And so anyways, that's certainly an issue. But it is interesting because it still hasn't really affected buying activity much, right? We were 102 pending transactions last week, which is right on track with where we've been for, the last 6 weeks. So not a lot going on there in terms of, people withholding from buying because rates are so high. One thing I did want to explain though with mortgage rates is that when those rates come down, like when you think about those big cities that I was just mentioning, if they're having an inventory problem where they have less inventory than normal because of these golden handcuffs, if that's happening and interest rates do come back down, let's say it's, next spring and things come back down to the 4s or 5s or whatever, and that unloads, a fury of buying, it's going to be chaos when you have less inventory. And that's kind of an interesting scenario. It's like this housing market, it's kind of creating like a perfect storm where if this is true with these golden handcuffs, that there's not a lot of inventory hitting the market because people have such a good rate. And then if rates come back down to where more people want to buy, there's not going to be a lot of inventory. And then that's going to cause prices to go up. And so it's just this interesting little situation, which I'm not saying is bad or good, really. It's just kind of, it's good if you're a homeowner because your home values will probably go up. And so it just kind of further solidifies what I always say, which is it's always a good time to buy, especially if you're not, if you don't own your home right now, because you can continue to build equity and you can see appreciation in your home and do all these sorts of things. So anyways, that's kind of what's going on. That's what I'm seeing and what I've kind of seen over the last week. So that's really all we got for this week. I hope that was of value to you to just kind of get you up to speed on what's been happening locally here in the housing market of Southern Oregon and also nationally and how that all pertains to us. So if there's anything I can do to help you learn, buy, or list real estate here in Southern Oregon, there's a link in the description of this video where you can set up a meeting with me. We can meet online and chat on Zoom or whatever works. Or if you'd like to call me or text me, my number is 541-954-7758. That's my direct line. And I look forward to hearing from you. And if not, I'll see you on the video next week. Have a good one.